Welcome, one and all, to Liberty After Dark live stream. We hope that you enjoy the show and will engage in the conversation along with us. So, without further ado, here's your host, Christian Moore.
There we go. Mics are on now. All right. And sweet. Cool. I'm trying to make sure that we're working on all the platforms. Apparently we had some issues last time, but whoops. Super bright. All I really care about is Facebook and YouTube more than anything. You're commenting from YouTube, so that's cool. Okay, so we're not live on Facebook, but we are live on YouTube. Is that what this is? Yeah. Okay, well, if that's the way it goes, you know. Whoops, they're streaming wrestling right now on Twitch, so. Channel. Yeah, we're streaming on Twitch too. So it's just Facebook then? That'd be pretty dumb. Looks like it. Alright, whatever. We'll just keep rolling. It's fine. If somebody wants to find the show, they'll come here. I'm not gonna worry too much about it. Cool. Let me fix this background real quick, and then we'll get you guys going. Yeah, that'll do right there. Nice. So today, we're going to be enjoying a Crawford Bach, or two, depending on if we get to the second one or not. Either way, they're getting consumed tonight, so might as well enjoy them with you guys. Let's go ahead and open this up before we get started. So, I mean, you guys have all seen me have shiners before on the show. This is like a little, just a slightly hoppier shiner, really. I think it's pretty good. Very, very yummy indeed. Cool. Yeah, it looks like we're all pretty much set up. I just got to pull up what we're going to use for today's show. Yum, I've never had that. It's pretty good. So, like a Bach is, it's a very, I don't know. It's dark, but it's a very mellow, smooth flavor. And this is like, this has like a layer of hops added on to the top of that I think is pretty good. Switch to the claw. Oh man, that's bold. Switching to the claw like that. I couldn't do it. Hold on, let me. Okay, that's the bottom right there, so we should be good. carbs. Gotcha. Yeah, this stuff is not exactly light. It's pretty dark, but I don't know. I've been starting to run now, and I've been cutting a lot of carbs out of my diet, so I don't feel bad. Plus, this is literally, I mean, it's March 7th. I haven't had a beer since February 1st. So, yeah. Oh, it's my boy Creamy Claws over here. Hey, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Creamy Claws here started streaming, so go to his Twitch channel and like that and follow it if you haven't already, and follow his YouTube channel because I love his content and I'm gonna push it whenever I can. I'm just opening up this link here. Whoops. Thanks for the shout out. Yeah, no problem, my dude. We gotta help each other out as small creators. Gotta cut loose and treat yourself. Yeah, basically. Okay, so I do have to change this a little bit. Hold on. Gotta make this just a wee bit smaller. Yeah, that'll do it. That should be literally the very bottom of the thing. The thing. Cool. So now you guys can see the whole text box. I mean, I know you can see the chat where you're at, but because we have chats coming from different places, I like to put them all in one unified location. Otherwise, I would just have them all run, to be honest. I found an old post that I think would be cool to go over for this episode. So, I like how the chats are unified. Me too. I think it makes it more engaging. I am probably going to be switching over to a screen where you can't see my face, but maybe you'll be able to see the chat. I kind of have to build it as I go because I didn't. Just could be completely transparent with you guys. I took a nap before this, so, and I didn't set an alarm either. I was watching TV with my stepdad, and I was laying down on the chair. We were watching some science TV about the Earth and how the days used to be like 21 hours long instead of 24, and actually all the way up to barely over 2 hours long when the moon and the Earth first hit. But I knocked out at around 4:30. Woke up at 7 o'clock. So we were playing things close today. But yeah, so it's a thread called Questions for Anarcho-Capitalists, and I feel like a lot of these things are either arguments that you see outside of, like, arguments that are brought up all the time inside of other circles, or they're unique arguments in some cases, or unique questions. Because a lot of these they're not arguments. Some of them are kind of like aha gotcha questions, but also a lot of these I think people just don't know what the answer is in a voluntarist society. So it is 6 questions. I will be paraphrasing 2 of them to get the idea across for the people who are in the podcast if we release this as a podcast, but I'll be reading the rest of them out. And yeah, so it's posted by a guy called Knowledge Pursuit in the ANCAP thread on Reddit 3 years ago. So it's quite old. I ran across it. I don't even know how I ran across it, but it was one of the first things that came to mind when I was looking at this, because I had a discussion with some people earlier on in the week that was, well, it was interesting to say the least. So I feel like kind of dissecting how other people look at this and maybe ways to approach some of these things can help everybody out. But music isn't too loud or anything, right? Before we get started here, because I'm about ready to get this puppy going. We'll put in a solid however long it takes to get through the topic. Probably won't be that long, honestly. We can do questions, and then we can all go back to our regularly scheduled lives. So yeah, this music's kind of funky though. I mean, like, I put my headphones on today because I was like, I want to listen to the music too. I mean, last time I let you guys listen to it all by yourselves, but I was like, not this time. Because this, I mean, it do be sounding kind of fresh though, right? I put it on the, it's this app called, what's it called? Hold on. The actual app itself is called Pretzel Rocks, and the channel is Synthwave. We did EDM a couple days ago and chiptune before that, but yeah, they got 36 hours of synthwave music on here, and some of it's pretty fresh. The chiptune stuff is pretty fresh too. I like it, but I like synthwave anyways. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I listen to when I'm like studying and stuff like that. Let's see what the next one is. Yeah, I like this. I already like it. I'm a simple man. Ooh, I love that 80s, those 80s synths, man. Synthwave. It'd be like that. All right. It looks like we're pretty much good to go here. So, everybody, make sure you got your drinks. Everybody's used the bathroom. I haven't, but I'll be fine. Big guy, I can handle it. Everything's looking pretty good here. We'll talk a little bit about some news items, but more than anything, I just want to talk about coronavirus. I'm not going to be really going into much other news because I don't really care. We'll talk about some Democratic candidates. Instead of me telling you what we're going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about it. So let's just turn this down just a hair. And then, yeah, we'll just barely turn me up just a wee bit, and then we're going to hit record. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Liberty After Dark. It is March 7th after taking a week off of doing the show. I hope everybody is doing fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Creamy Claus, for showing up here. If you guys don't know, Creamy Claus has got a YouTube channel. He does a lot of funny content. Make sure you check it out. We got Nightmare from Liberty Late Night in the chat as well. Liberty Late Night being a fantastic libertarian and, just generally fun live stream. So make sure you guys check them out too on Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. Cool. That's the audience plugs done. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. Today we are going to be looking at a Reddit post called Questions for Anarcho-Capitalists that applies pretty good to the voluntarist world. And I thought that this would just be a good way to look at some common questions that you see, how to address them. Because I really, I kind of want to make a month of, March, or maybe not just this month, but, the next couple of shows on how to address people who don't agree with this. Because, it's something that even, I consider myself pretty well adept in voluntarist arguments. I can even find myself very often getting frustrated by the overwhelming amount of cliche and repeated arguments for solved issues that I feel like, it would be good for us to kind of cover some of the basic answers and, what to do in the future. But mostly today, we're just going to be looking at these questions that come in this post here. And also, it has some really unique posts, and it is dated itself. This is from 3 years ago. So one of the questions is about Ebola, but I felt like this is super pertinent because you can just replace Ebola with coronavirus. And we have a great question. That's question 1, by the way, so you won't have to wait long to hear us talk about that. In the news, though, everybody is completely losing their minds over coronavirus. Let's just go ahead and talk about this because it is the big hot item. Coronavirus is spreading throughout the U.S. and Western Europe, and actually the whole world, and people are freaking out about it. Some of it is justified. I think especially those people who work in medical care sectors or who work with the elderly or children and stuff like that have more of a reason to be concerned about contracting coronavirus and spreading it than normal people. I think the fatality rate is still somewhere in the 2 point something percentage range. So odds are if you were to catch coronavirus, it would be a mild flu, maybe a really severe flu at worst, and then you'd be over it. A lot of people have been going out and buying like cold and flu medicine. Guys, I don't know, if anybody listening to this is doing that and just isn't aware, but cold and flu medicine does not stop the cold and flu. It pretty much just masks the symptoms until your body gets done fighting it. And if you are that worried about catching the coronavirus, the last thing you need to do is make yourself appear to be asymptomatic for even a day or two more, because it could directly lead to people being hurt, hospitalized, if not die. So especially, again, if you're around elderly people or very small children, those are the most susceptible people to coronavirus. But there was an infant who had coronavirus who recovered from it, or a toddler. It was either an infant or a toddler. I can't remember. I was reading about that. So it's not like it's an unwinnable battle if someone young or old was to get coronavirus. It's just not preferable. But now what they're talking about is getting coronavirus a second time and getting a heart attack from the second contraction. I haven't gotten around to researching that claim, but it's definitely interesting. So I don't know how rapidly COVID-19 is, which is the official name of the coronavirus, because the coronavirus is a family of diseases, which SARS is in the same family of diseases. Like SARS is a coronavirus. But COVID-19 is the official name of this particular strain, kind of like how H1N1 is the particular strain of swine flu, stuff like that. Or was that bird flu? I think it was swine flu was H1N1. But we all have to, take a step back and look at the fact that, also, thanks for the host, Liberty Late Night, that COVID-19, if it is mutating so rapidly that you can catch it a second time, that's pretty extreme, because the way that your body works whenever it battles against these kinds of diseases is that usually when you catch it once, you're good. Like when you catch the flu, the odds of you re-catching the flu are extremely slim. Now, if you are someone with an extremely depressed immune system, or if you are someone, like an autoimmune disorder or something like that, I could see how it would be a genuine concern whether or not you would re-catch the disease. But those same people are the people who have to worry about not dying from shingles if they ever had chickenpox as a kid. So it's just, we can only do so much. We have a planet with 7 point something billion people on it, and you have autoimmune disease and probably live in an urbanized area. It's not a great combination. Even in the cleanest, most sanitary time in human history, it's not a great combination. So, someone was saying, I saw a post on r/coronavirus, that if the 2% fatality rate stays and it doesn't change, which it could be higher, could be lower, because maybe not all the people who are infected are being accurately reported, but also maybe deaths are not being accurately reported. But if it stayed the same, it would be a death toll around like 920,000 people or something, which, look, that's pretty bad, right? But I'm pretty sure malaria kills more than that every year. I'm gonna go ahead and Google myself. And I think we have to kind of, we gotta kind of take a step back and say, like, what is actually going on here? Are we overreacting? Should we be more concerned than we are? And these are just, we just need to be as responsible as possible about what's happening. Yeah, okay, so there's an estimated 405,000 deaths from malaria globally. Malaria is a cured disease as well. So, the Spanish flu took out a huge chunk of the population. Spanish flu. Coronavirus wouldn't be crap compared to the Spanish flu. And the Spanish flu happened in a much, 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 much less globalized world. It was, the reason it spread globally, it was a global epidemic, was because it was the dawn of the globalized age. But we're talking like that was it it went on like ships and stuff like that, like cruise ships, ironically enough, but like freighting ships. It didn't have globalized transportation, being able to fly across the country pretty much any day you want of the week, or fly across the world. So it is definitely different, and we have a lot more centralized, urbanized areas. We have a lot more just social integration altogether. So it is prime environment for a disease to come through, and it's completely natural. I get it that we as humans feel like that we have to constantly be on the lookout for these things, and we do. We should. I think we should preserve as much human life as possible, but we also have to accept the fact that, you know, if we weren't like really smart monkeys, like, we'd lose way, way, way more than this percentage of our population to disease every single year, to diseases we've known about for forever. Okay, the only reason that these coronaviruses and these flus and all this become issues is because they mutate from a strain that we had already identified. Thankfully, measles isn't very good at that. So otherwise we'd be fighting measles all the time like we fight flus and coronaviruses, and that would not be fun, because measles is not fun. So but yeah, creamy is right here. The flu took out a huge portion of the population. Spanish flu. If you don't know about it, read about it. It's terrible. It's, ooh, man. Millions and millions of people got sick from that. And as far as like political news goes, I know I haven't covered any of the debates since the debate before Super Tuesday. I think I will do the next debate if I'm not speaking about a debate that's literally about to happen. And it's because it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens with just the two being there. Because, you know, I mean, I don't. All right, let me see. How do I want to put this? I think it will be interesting to see Biden and Bernie going at each other, but I do think a lot of the fun is kind of gone. And now that they've changed the rules for getting into the next debate, because the debate rules were supposed to be, if you have a delegate, you got into the debate. Well, Tulsi Gabbard got a delegate. So Tulsi Gabbard, yeah, they just changed the rules for these after Super Tuesday to exclude Tulsi Gabbard from the debate. If you don't recognize, if you were a Democrat and you don't recognize that the DNC is a total con, I don't know what to tell you, man, because it's pretty obvious that this is not a conducive to a good democratic process, and I'm not even a fan of those processes. So if I'm the one telling you that you've got some stuff messed up here, you really got some stuff messed up. That's all I'm saying, you know. I would not want to be in your shoes right now. Also, I figured out why your thing was cut off. It's because I'm bad at this. There we go. Sweet. Cool. Yeah, so Tulsi Gabbard's still in, but she's not going to make the next debate. The next Democratic debate is on the... Thanks for being patient for me, live stream people. I did want to look this up, though. It's going to be a week from now. CNN, Univision. The next one is in April. It's unscheduled. We'll probably do the next one. We'll probably do March 15th. I don't see why not. I will, yeah, that's Sunday. So I will still be, it'll still be the weekend and everything, and we'll probably do a normal show, or we may postpone the show and just do that. We'll see. I'll make up my decision before Friday. But yeah, and then we have April, and I think that's it for the primaries. There may be one more in May, but after that, it's the convention basically. So, they got to start making their minds. And now that we're down to 2 candidates, I don't really see how much more movement there's going to be from debates. Debating in the primaries is where most of the movement happens. Once the primaries are over with and the candidates are selected, then I pretty much stopped caring about the debates after that because, well, to be honest with you, no movement happens. It's more just for entertainment at that point than anything. And not to say that the debates aren't entertaining, because they definitely are. But all right, let's go ahead. I'm going to start building this scene, and we're going to look at the posts that I was talking about here. We'll get to the meat of all this. For those of you listening in the podcast, if I make this into a podcast, which I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it. I'll read out the questions for you so you're not completely lost, and everybody who's at home here can also follow along with us. And actually, what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna chop the top of this chat box off because I can see the full chat box over here. Oh yeah, Davey remembers that you'll eat a part of your shoe if Bernie wins. If he wins at all, or if he wins the nomination. I think I said the nomination too. I will record myself eating a small portion of my shoe if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination, because man, are they making it look like it's not gonna happen. That's really all I can say there. It's not looking so great for Bernie. He's fighting an uphill battle if I've ever seen one. Hillary Clinton was just on national, or her show on Hulu, and she was just talking all kinds of smack about Bernie Sanders. And you know, whether we like to, whoa, get that thing out of my face. What are you doing here? What the heck? See, this is why I try not to do stuff live. Whether we want to admit it or not, Hillary Clinton actually has a lot of sway over some people. And yeah, I get it. That's pretty gross, right? But we don't make the rules here. We just kind of have to accept the fact that these are truths of a world that we just so happen to live in. All right, let's go ahead and make this smaller from there to there, and then we're gonna blow it up real big, and you guys will be able to see it. And everybody in the podcast won't have to deal with this, because in the podcast it'll seem like I was really prepared and that everything was all ready to go, even though it totally wasn't. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and spoil those questions for you guys, and then if I scroll, yep, when I scroll it should be there. Cool. Let me make sure I got everything here. Actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change everything one more time, because you know how I do, guys. I can't ever make up my freaking mind. Move this down here. Does that make any more room? Yeah, it does. If I make you guys a little bit smaller, that's fine. We can make you guys smaller. We'll live. I can still see all your comments, so. But we're gonna take this and we're gonna go whoosh with it. That way you guys can actually see what we're talking about today, because I think that's more important, arguably. You guys could still kind of sort of see the unified comments, but I do think this is the meat of what we're talking about, so we might as well. All right. Cool. We got that set up. It only took me like 2 minutes. Sorry about that. If I didn't take a nap, I would have built this scene before I came onto the show, but you know, nap time kind of got in the way of that. So I'm going to skip a lot of this introduction. Basically, I mean, you guys could read it for yourself. He says, or this person says that, you know, they're not here to attack anybody. They have genuine questions. And that's my favorite kind of person. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that that is a courtesy that 9 times out of 10 you will not be granted. Most people will not come into a conversation with a fair, reasonable expectations for the conversation you will be having. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I told them that I don't like having conversations with bad faith actors. And they were like, what does that even mean? If someone is, you know, and I'm sure I don't have to explain this to all of you guys, but for those of you who don't know, if someone is conversing in bad faith, it means that they're being combative senselessly. There's nothing wrong with probing each other's ideas or trying to, you know, what's a good word for what I'm trying to explain here? There's nothing wrong with trying to be as thorough as possible when dissecting someone's ideas or even debating. But when you come into something with, like, you know, catch-22 questions, and you're trying to goad people into, you know, just blatantly wrong responses to questions or misrepresenting their ideas. So this person is just trying to let us know that they're not doing that, which I appreciate. And question 1 right here, which is what really made me say, like, okay, we might want to talk about this stuff. Question 1 right here. Ebola, how would it's weird how they phrase this, but how would an anarcho-capitalist society handle an Ebola outbreak similar to what occurred a few years ago? So again, posted 3 years ago. Ebola is question number 1 right here. And I think this is a great question because we have really simple answers for a lot of these sort of things. The market provides being one of them. But what would happen? What are some genuine things that would happen during a coronavirus outbreak in Ancapistan, right? So one of the things that government does a lot that voluntarists don't believe in is price gouging. Whatever the market demands of a specific, whatever the scarcity of an item allows it to be sold for, or the scarcity of the resource allows someone to charge for it. Obviously, the market shouldn't be inhibited in selling that item for whatever cost people agree to sell it at. It also prevents people abusing these items. So a lot of people are saying that they have issues with people who are buying out large amounts of things like, masks and stuff like that. And a lot of these things are being bought out at such ridiculously low prices from places like Walmart, stuff like that, is because Walmart isn't gouging their prices as supply falls. I think as long as there's a proportional response to saying, like, listen, we've only got, let's just say they have 1 million masks. That's it. And I know they have more than that, but let's just say they have 1 million masks and that's all. 3 million people want to buy masks. You got to figure out which people get the masks. And it's not first come, first serve in most cases. And you also don't want somebody buying 200,000 masks because they're $1 a piece or whatever, and they're freaking out and they blow their whole bank account on it. You want to avoid stuff like that. So whether we like to admit it or not, price gouging is a way of keeping items in the market. It's a way of keeping the supply available so that if you are in a situation where you absolutely must have a mask, you can get one. But that's not always an option in today's society. So, if Walmart were to increase the prices, even probably just a few bucks of their masks, like take a box of masks, I think they were going for like $10, and you increase them to $20 or $25, then they could get hit with some extreme fines for price gouging based off of what is probably going to be considered some sort of natural crisis or something like that here. So that's one thing that immediately changes under Ancapistan. Obviously, the medical industry doesn't go away. They have a vested interest in people paying them to fix whether it's Ebola or coronavirus or whatever. A lot of these independent organizations that have been working on the coronavirus still exist. Very few of them receive government funds because governments have their own organizations for some of these things. Even the World Health Organization is actually mostly run by private contributions. So it's, do most of these organizations disappear? Or are they replaced with other organizations? Probably. Either way, there are still people out there fighting on ground zero who don't have to be, and God bless those people too. They don't get a lot of credit for what they do, but especially people like Doctors Without Borders, stuff like that. I mean, they do a lot of amazing work for basically nothing when they could just come to the U.S. and make, a really, really decent living just practicing medicine in the United States. So that may sound like a kind of dance around the question, but I think, in today's world, it was spearheaded by public services, which were then contracted out to private businesses, which created ways to, or more effective means of handling the Ebola outbreak, like being able to properly filter water and stuff like that. Because notice that when Ebola specifically was being dealt with, it wasn't really like they were pumping out Ebola vaccines. They were using preventative measures to keep Ebola from spreading, because Ebola is kind of like a wildfire. If it doesn't have any fuel, it dies, right? And if you're properly filtering your water, if people stop pooping in the rivers and stuff like that, which honestly is the number one way it spreads, is from feces getting into or excrement of any kind actually getting into the water system, whether it be blood or otherwise. And it's really gross to think about. But yeah, people drink out of that same water, and that's how you get Ebola, and how it spreads rapidly. People upstream getting people downstream sick. So being able to properly filter water and stuff like that was the biggest way of stopping it. For coronavirus, you don't necessarily have that. So what do you do for coronavirus? You need to be able to quarantine people in facilities. You need to be able to treat those with the most severe COVID-19 cases, and you need to be able to accurately detect people who have coronavirus. And those three things together are how you really mitigate the spreading of it, besides washing your hands and basic stuff like that. So do these things change in a voluntarist world? I don't see them changing. I don't see hospitals taking different procedures just because they live in a voluntary society. In fact, there's no reason for them to, right? They still have a vested interest in not everyone dying. Because if everybody dies, nobody gets to pay their hospital bills. If the family and then their next of kin also get super flu and die, not saying that coronavirus is that bad, but it is a lot easier for people to pay when they are alive. So they have a vested interest in rendering the service of you not dying, is basically what I'm getting at. So I don't know if much changes. I think maybe the approach would have changed. Maybe when it got addressed would have changed. I don't see Voluntarist America really doing anything about coronavirus until it got to the US, but it didn't anyways. I mean, there were small contributions to international organizations that deal with health issues, and the CDC exists, but what has the CDC done? Tell you to not wear masks when you're healthy or whatever? I don't know. So that's just, I do know. That's pretty much all they've done at this point. I know they're working to help create new methods of preventing a spread, but again, this isn't anything that a private organization couldn't do as long as there was some profit to be made. And I promise you, if there's a global epidemic, there's a profit to be made. Just like how construction companies do so well after tornadoes and earthquakes. It's weird, right? But no one gets mad at construction people. It's just a business, You ever been in a roofer in a town that just had a hurricane? Great business. Great business. Let me tell you what. Everybody needs their roof redone. And you can't be mad at the guy who does roofs. It's what he does. Question 2. All right. So basically, I'm going to kind of summarize this one for those of you in the podcast. But basically the non-aggression principle, they say it works well in one-to-one interactions. But what about an adult who sexually assaults children, especially if the adult has trained the child to consent to such treatment? Which, wow, this is a question, man. This is a question. Holy crap. I should have really thought about this one before. should not other or outside parties intercede, even though this would violate the NAP? This is troubling according to the NAP because a third party is not been aggressed upon. That's completely false. So the whole issue with question 2 is asking oh, well, what do you do about someone who's in a pedophilic relationship with a consenting child? There's no such thing, right? We have to accept this to begin with. There is no such thing as a child that can consent to sexual intercourse. This isn't a thing, right? If it was, then sure, maybe this guy would have an argument, but it's not a thing. Children can consent to a lot of things, and they should, whenever possible, be asked for their consent when something's going to happen. But in a case like this, where a child is being exploited, yeah. Complimentary lead smoothie. Yeah, this is exactly, so, Creamy Claus is getting ahead of me. The NAP is pretty clear about this, right? The child is being abused, whether the child realizes it or not, okay? This is you could make the same argument for someone with Stockholm Syndrome, right? If someone kidnaps somebody and tortures them, and then the kidnappee says oh, don't hurt them. They were in a bad place. They didn't know what, Stockholm Syndrome. This happens all the time. You start to sympathize with the people who are aggressing upon you. It's not like you can't then the nap has already been violated. It doesn't matter what the other party says. Unless they had, as adults, and this is important, unless adults had a contractual agreement that they would be kidnapped and then beaten or whatever, or had all their stuff stolen or sold into slavery or whatever horrible things happen to people who are kidnapped. They get Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The nap has already been violated. That person has already violated human rights, unless, again, you signed on the dotted line saying, like, yeah, kidnap me. I mean, that's a thing, actually. People pay for that. People pay for the kidnapping experience. What a world we live in, right? Oh, God, what a world. So, yeah, I mean, this question is worded strangely, and honestly, I mean, it's really just a topic that I mean, if you don't think the topic is uncomfortable, I don't know, I think that's weird personally, but it's a pretty straightforward thing. Children cannot consent to sexual actions, so the person gets, as Creamy Claw said, a lead smoothie. This child, even in this question, if you guys go and look this up later on Reddit, even in this exact question, they say if they were, I think, what is it? If they were trained to consent, okay? Training someone to consent is not consent, right? Consent means that you have all of the mental faculties to weigh what the situation is giving you, and then, trained is like an automatic response. Train is when I tell my dog to sit and it sits. Okay, that's not my dog consenting to sitting. That's them being trained that they're going to sit when I say sit. That's completely different. So, yeah, let's just that was a pretty easy question, honestly, to go through right there. It just, man, the topic is big oof. Question 3. This is one of my favorite ones. I'm actually gonna take another swig of my Crawford Bock here. Why flame minarchists when they are anarchists' closest philosophical cousins? Which I think it's a very bold claim for them to make. But furthermore, ANCAPs believe that individuals can delegate authority to others via contract. So would not a constitutional contract such as Liberlands or Libertanias, or, in this case they use Liberlands, be keeping with ANCAP philosophy, even though it's a minarchist approach to it? So it's easier if I do the second part first. The second part there about could you live in a, constitutional republic, minarchy in Ancapistan if you consent to it 100%. But you have to first be free to consent. Remember, the whole consent thing requires that you be free to make a choice to say no and understand the consequences of those choices, right? That this is part of consent. This is why people who are intoxicated can't consent to something, even if they are mentally aware. They could be inhibited in ways that they aren't aware of. That's to protect themselves. That's why you can't go in and sign a contract for, well, you're not supposed to go in and sign a contract for a house, drunk off your face to get a mortgage. That's you can't properly consent to taking on a debt like that. Same thing with this. As long as you can consent, which again requires you to be in a free society to begin with, then yes, you can start your commune, you can start your Democratic People's Republic of Chicago. You can, do whatever you want. And at that point, whatever you consent to is the laws that you live by. And I hope you agreed to a really good set, because it could be the end of your freedoms, perhaps. And there isn't anything anybody could do about it unless they wanted to violate the contract law or the NAP. And I don't know very many people who are willing to do that to people who consent to crappy deals. So yeah. And the first question, which I think is a lot more pertinent to me specifically, why flame minarchists when they are anarchists' closest philosophical cousins? I think there's a very big difference, very huge difference from someone who says, like, okay, let's just break down all 3 levels. And I think it's easiest if we start from where we are now, because, as the guy who makes voluntarist content for Voluntarists, I'm sure I'm knocking, or I'm preaching to the choir here, but voluntarists believe that the monopolization of violence under the government is unethical, because coercive violence to run society is unethical, right? In any situation. and that is fundamentally what a government requires. Okay, this doesn't have anything to do with the fact that like I don't like the president or blah 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 or XYZ political affiliation with some. No, this is just violence is unethical. Therefore, you cannot tax. Therefore, you cannot effectively run any sort of organization like this without the consent of the people. Therefore, I didn't consent to your rules anyways. Therefore, no government. So, it's. I said this to somebody the other day. Is that anarchy or voluntarist principles wasn't designed around the goal of anarchy. It was designed around a fundamental set of ethical values that then resulted in, well, we have no other option than voluntarist, anarchist societies. We have no other option to live ethical lives. Living ethical lives, living under the specific set of ethical rules that, which I believe are, proven by things like the categorical imperative, Kantian categorical imperative, and are backed up by literally hundreds of years of human philosophy. Some people will disagree with him, and I think it's a fantastic conversation. But regardless, if you're going to use the set of ethical rules and guidelines that we use, then the only application of them that's consistent is voluntarist anarchism. So now that I've said that, statists believe that none of that is true, that you can use coercive violence as long as it's for the good of, this is the whole, really, most of what is happening here comes from really an ends justify the means mentality more than anything. I think if you ask someone if coercive violence is a good thing, they're going to say no. And it says, well, like, why can you extort people for taxes then? And they said, well, it helps so many people. So most of this comes from an ends justifies the means thing, right? And what fundamental rule does minarchy follow? That, okay, government is bad, but we need it, so I guess we'll have a small one. Doesn't that sound like an ends justify the means thing, kind of like the status? Like, if you go up to any, like, let's just go up to a Democrat and ask them, like, hey, what do you think about people, violence by the government on the people? And they'd be like, oh my God, it's terrible. I cannot believe, like, we gotta stop this, right? And then you're like, great, cool. So we should abolish the income tax, right? And they'd be like, whoa, buddy, slow your roll there, I feel minarchists are in that same exact camp. You're like, man, government violence has got to stop. And they're like, yeah, dude, we gotta cut down on this government violence thing. And you're like, yeah, we gotta abolish the state because, the state is the reason that the violence exists, and it will continue to exist as long as the state does. And they're like, whoa there, like, listen, I don't like the government either, but we just can't get rid of it. Think of how many people, blah, 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 blah. Ends justifying the means. So when they say minarchists are anarchists' closest philosophical cousins, I think that's completely false. I think minarchists are the closest philosophical cousins to Republicans or constitutionalists or something like that. But I think it's extremely bold to say voluntarist's closest philosophical cousin is minarchists. I think if you said agorists, if you said, a lot of other things, actually, I think philosophical cousins were probably closer to ANCOMs than we are to minarchists, because at least ANCOMs don't believe in a state. I mean, they have a lot of really other dumb things that obviously we don't agree with, as we are fundamentally a right-wing ideology. But, at least, I mean, they have that down, that the state is a power structure, is not ethical. I think that's, pretty easy to see. And I can't stand ANCOMs. So if I'm saying this, I really can't stand minarchists either, though. So maybe I'm a little biased here, but I don't know. Maybe that made sense. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me if I'm way off or whatever, but I don't think it's a fair comparison to say that minarchists are ideological cousins. Maybe they are cousins, but I think the insinuation that they're the closest ideologies to one another is completely off base. Completely off base. We're way too radical to be minarchists. Oh, man. All right. Cool. Question 4 here. Some anarchists don't vote or participate in government in general, but would not pragmatism. Oh, cringe! No one said my trigger word in so long. Still triggers me to this day. Would not pragmatism dictate at least filing in or filling in government positions as a placeholder, occupying space, and not doing anything abusive to liberty, as opposed to letting someone else fill that space who would be abusive to liberty? Alternative tactics could be to challenge everything to a trial in regard to traffic tickets and such, to clog and crash the system. Now, I think I am becoming more and more open to nuanced approaches to dealing with government violence. I think really a lot of it has to come from some of the reading I did from Patrick Smith over at Disenthrall and his Not Governor campaign. I think a lot of the, maybe change of heart is too strong of a word, but a lot of the change in mind that I've had more recently about some of this stuff is because of that. But I think if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to run a NAP compliant campaign. I don't think it's impossible, though. Like Patrick said, he determined that governor is one of the positions that you can run a NAP compliant campaign in. I personally haven't done enough research on this to make a call for myself, but I don't think it's impossible to run city council positions in a NAP compliant way. I don't think it's impossible to be a state or local representative or whatever in a NAP compliant way. But I think if you're not going to do it right, don't do it. If you're someone who goes in as a voluntarist and then you become a career politician in the Senate and you get all your benefit, no, stop. Okay, just pump the brakes. All right, you've gone too far. You have become the system. Do not. Even if you just vote no on every single bill, unless it's strictly deregulation and that's the only thing you vote yes on, there's still so much nuance. Like you get your travel and stuff like that reimbursable. Well, that's stolen money, so you have to give that money back. Who do you give it to? Do you divvy it out to people? Do you give it to your district? It's not all from your district. So there's a ton of nuance to this. And even if you were to forfeit your paycheck, that money just goes back into a pot, I bet. If it's even possible to forfeit your paycheck. I don't even know if it's possible. I think it's technically illegal for you to be a representative without collecting pay. I think you have to get paid and then give it away. And then how do you feed yourself? So most people just take the pay. And so here's the word right here. Pragmatism. A lot of people who I know who are running for campaigns who are either very close to voluntarists or just straight up voluntarists are very pragmatic in their approach. They say, look, it's better me than somebody else. And I think if you're going to use pragmatism at all in anything, I think you need to use it in terms of, Spooner is not pragmatic, but I think if you want to use pragmatism, use it to lean towards Spooner, which is the idea of defensive voting. So, I do, however, strongly think that this is a great idea, is to just fight everything. Like, if you have the ability to go to court for every traffic ticket, every time a cop pulls you over, challenge him for it. Local court fees are really not that much to begin with, but the amount of, if every traffic ticket went to court, I don't think you guys realize how many traffic tickets don't go to court. There are not enough court dates on the books for them to deal with all these traffic tickets. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really low cost, great way to just completely shut down an abusive system. But, that's what I get when I read that. As far as filling the seats, I've been taking more of a lukewarm. I used to be, when the show started, I was pretty for it. I was like, look, let's get people in there. Back then, I still probably would have called myself a party libertarian. But now, I kind of went through a phase where I was like, we just need to avoid politics. And now I think I'm kind of I'm reaching the point to where I've accepted the fact that if you can run a NAP compliant campaign and you can justify it, and you can be like, look, this is how I'm complying with the NAP. I'm doing everything I can to do the best of both worlds. And I think I would accept that. I don't think I would kick that person out of the cool kids club or anything like that. Yeah. So Question 5. Could ANCAPs or voluntarists initiate at a local level tactics like the below in addition to walking away from the system? So this is, I'm not going to go too much into this, but you can just get it from the link here in the title of the article. Veterans force 102 corrupt officials to resign, place entire local board under citizens arrest. Could ANCAPs initiate at a local level tactics like the below? Yeah. If you make a contract with somebody that says, like, this is our governmental structure and we don't allow corruption, and then they start committing corruption, they're breaking their contract with you, especially if they're like elected members of the organization of the holders of that contract, which would be the township or political unit that you operate under. Game over, man. Game over. You just violated contract law. Yeah, citizens arrest isn't a thing. You've just broken contract law and you will be held liable for it. Whether it's you lose your place on the board, whether it's you get arbitrated upon, or whether it's, you know, just a normal NAP response at that point for violating your contract. Because if it's a particularly aggressive form of corruption, the non-aggression principle is there to help guide you. If you didn't consent to the aggression anyways, which is, yes, a thing. Really easy one right there. Really easy one. And 6, if questions challenging to a political philosophy are thrown into downvote hell without at least providing comments, refuting the question, answering the question, or commenting on the question in general, how is such a response distinguishable from some fundamentalist religions? I just wanted to read that one because I think this last comment is something that I get all the time. All the time. You're dogmatic. You're a zealot of voluntarism. You are an extreme radical. Now that one I can accept. I can accept the fact that I'm a radical, but saying that I'm some kind of zealot is definitely not not what I would consider having a conversation in good faith, personally. Unless I walk into the conversation and I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, you statist pricks? Get ready to get owned by my big voluntarist brain. And I mean it, which is never going to happen. That's how you know I would be coming to that conversation in bad faith, because I want to win over you. Yeah, but that happens very often. It's like, oh, you're unwilling to compromise, or they use the P word. They use the P word right here, pragmatism, which, you know, cringe at that. But they say, oh, you just refuse to be pragmatic. You're dogmatic. You're a zealot. You're hyper radical. You're impossible to work with. And I say I'm principled. So maybe these things are all synonyms, and I'm just the one who refuses to admit it. But I think when I read that, I chuckled, because not the pragmatism. I don't laugh at that word. That's a dirty word in this house. But how is that response distinguishable from fundamental religions? Checkmate, theists. You know, I'm agnostic atheist. So I don't. I just think it's funny when stuff. You know, that's just such a. I could just see him tipping his fedora and being like, I got those theists. They sure took that one. But yeah, that's it for this. There's no more questions. Some of these answers are better than others. This one is yeah, I mean, some of these guys are giving very, very good answers. Some of them are not so great answers. But we're gonna go back over to, oh no, I messed up my scene. That's what I did. There's no going back. Get rid of that window capture. Boom. Coming back over here. So we've been going for about 50 minutes. That's a little shorter than most episodes, but it's not bad. I'm totally fine with ending the content there if you guys don't have any questions. That's really all I wanted to go over today. Just a light, fun episode going over some arguments that you might hear about and looking at some more ways to identify some of these issues. Because really, like, when you come to this show, or when you're engaged in voluntarism, you are engaged in a constantly thick pool of philosophy. I don't know a better way of putting it than that. You are constantly engaged in the most extreme of hypotheticals. I mean, just bring up the non-aggression principle to anybody, and especially if they're new to it, the first things that comes to mind is like, well, how do you deal with X? How do you deal with Y? What happens if the Grinch comes down and steals my Christmas tree and he's got a gun, but he doesn't aim it at me, but the dog snarls a little bit and I get a little scared, and then, you know, I feel a little warm stream run down my leg, and then I reach into my pocket and the Grinch shoots me. What does the app say? And then, you know, it's like, yeah, we play these games all the time with people, so I think it's fun to look at some more unique ones. I feel like some of those you've heard before, some of them you might not have. I really enjoyed thinking about the Ebola one in terms of the coronavirus. Now, did I have a particularly revolutionary answer is for you to decide, but either way, I think it's fun to sit down and think about these things. I like to think about these things. I like to talk them out and converse with people about them. That's kind of why I do what I do. So all right. I think I think that's pretty much it. Everybody in the chat seems to be pretty good with the conversation that we had. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. No complaints here. We talked a little bit about news. We went over the main topic and we're good to go. Yep. Cool. Just making sure everything's good here. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you haven't yet, consider becoming a member of the Patreon team. We're trying to, increase the Patreon funds a little bit to help with costs of running the show and to help with expanding. I'm working on a YouTube video right now, so don't forget to come over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you can be here when that gets eventually released. Also, don't forget to check out the Facebook page. We also have a community group where sometimes I'll post fun stuff. Like I post a sneak peek of the video that I'm doing for this for YouTube over there. So if you want to stay on the latest up to date, that's a great place to do it. And I thank everybody who's been here for the show for their support. Don't forget, we will be back next week, either on Sunday for the debate, or we will be here Saturday and Sunday for a live stream and debate coverage. Expect more content on how to talk and converse and debate with people who are not voluntarists later on in the rest of the month, and probably a little bit into April as well. So that'll kind of be the theme. So I might be taking off, just so you guys know, the weekend of the 21st and the 22nd, because the 23rd is my birthday. So I will most likely be celebrating my birthday on one of those days. If I'm not, again, I'll let you guys know. So we might end up having debate next week with no main show, possibly. No confirmed dates yet. Keep an eye on the Facebook page. But the next weekend might be another bye week where we don't have any content. But we'll see. We will see. I will let you guys know well in advance. So at least 48 hours in advance at minimum. So nobody take off work to come watch Liberty After Dark at night. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Anything else from the comments? I think the comments might have died, honestly. Yep, I see Mary down there giving a good re. So there we go. All right, that's it. Thanks for coming out, guys. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did. I will see you guys next time. Take it easy. Okay, stream or the actual Audacity recording for the podcast is over. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. You guys take it easy. Thanks for coming out.